Before I get into fashion, the word inspiration is just something that I experience in the generic way. Like today I'm inspired to do this, today I'm inspired to do that. But when I was preparing for the fashion school, the first question that the teacher would ask is, what is your inspiration for this collection? And that was when I got to experience the concept of inspiration. And of course, we can draw inspiration from anything at all, from our life, how we brought up, any culture at all, art, movie, music, your preference, people, where you surround yourself, the place that you visit. It can be anything at all. Everything can be inspiration, but not everything inspires us. And there is a difference in that. That is how I got to really ask myself when I was preparing for the fashion school to really think deeply about what really inspires me and categorize it in sketchbook, in mood board, whatsoever. And that was when I started to find my own creative voice, to begin to set my foot in the creative realm, to be able to differentiate myself, to find my own voice, to find my own style in fashion. There is this teaching in Buddhism called Malaka Sutta แปลเป็นไทยว่ามงคลชีวิต 38 ประการนะคะ so it's like the 38 conditions for an auspicious life, and there is this verse that talk about having great learning and skill in work, and it also mentioned about art is that art is when we turn the ordinary thing into something better, into something worthier. And I think it's the same concept of inspiration. Inspiration is when we be able to transform something into something better. And over the years, I have learned that choosing inspiration wisely is also important as well. There was this one class in school that it's a class that we get to explore the experience that has an emotional impact on us and turn it into design. And for me, it was like we have to relive that experience again and again. Even more than that, we have to go deep within, because we have to be able to turn it into the design, a proper one. And especially if that project is long, so you have to spend time with that concept and inspiration. So in my experience, I found that to choose the concept and inspiration that is nourishing and that drawn me to get back into the project, that make me happy when I'm doing it, is also important as well. But it doesn't mean that to explore the inspiration that has an emotional impact on us is the wrong way to go. It just depends on each designer, how they want to express themselves, how they want to explore. So this is the 3 pieces collection that I created that inspires from Venus. There is this trick that fashion students likely to use to choose the inspiration that easy to digest, I would say. So in one hand, there is this abstract concept, idea and inspiration, like my inspiration is love, my inspiration is sadness, my inspiration is something abstract. And the other hand is an inspiration that is easy to digest, that has a lot of elements to play with. And of course, there is nothing wrong about inspire from love per se, but as a designer, you have to be able to translate it into something tangible, because that is what we are doing. We translate something abstract into something that we can touch, something tangible. So you have to be able to bridge between these two gaps. So what would I think about if I say my inspiration is from love? Okay, so I think about the goddess of love in Greek mythology, which is the Venus goddess. So now we are getting somewhere. We have some element to play with, and then it's time to research it further, because you still have to be able to turn the Venus goddess into something that full of design element. So normally when we get into the design process, we will set the concept and inspiration first, and then we will start to go step by step from the design process, from having a strong idea, a strong concept and inspiration, to sourcing the fabric and material, right? But for this collection particularly, there is a certain limitation in it, because I would like to use a reclaimed fabric, a reclaimed material. So my approach to create this collection is not step by step, but rather be able to translate the limitations that I have into a proper design. And that being said, I have limited choices of color. I have limited choices of fabric, because it's the fabric that I collect over these years, over different projects, so it's a scrap of fabric that mixing together. So the amount of fabric is also limited as well. So when I do the design, I have to calculate accordingly, according to the amount of fabric that I have. So what left for me to play with is the design itself, the silhouette, the technique and detail, that I can do it more freely. And thinking about the Venus goddess, of course, she is the goddess of love, the goddess of beauty, fertility, and so on. But those are still the abstract idea that we mentioned about earlier. So how to turn those abstract quality into something tangible? So I started to look at the fabric that I had, which is black satin fabric, and then I came up with this concept that all beauty was born from darkness. Because to think about it, darkness is something that we likely to turn away from, is something that we scare off. In various senses, is something that we don't want to experience. But when something was born, it was born from darkness. Our mother's womb is all dark in there. Even the star in the sky, the universe, is all dark up there. Without the sun, it's just a plain darkness. And then I choose the well-known symbol of Venus goddess, which is the seashell shape, with the using of draping technique. And then I embellished the cups with embroidered gradient effect to imitate the white foam of the sea, just like in the mythology of how Venus was born, how she emerged fully grown and riding on the seashell. So normally when we design a fashion collection, we have to be able to interconnect each element in different parts of each piece in the collection, so that they look like they come from the same family, but they are not exactly the same. And that connected me to the second piece, which was inspired by the famous painting Primavera by Botticelli. Primavera is one of my all-time favorite paintings. It features over 500 individual plants and over 130 that can actually identify the species. If you read into Botticelli's work, you will see how intricate in terms of detail and the symbolism behind his work. So I choose 3 types of flowers in this painting that represented the Venus goddess the most, which are white rose, primrose, and anemone, and each one of them represents a different meaning, such as divine beauty, love, youth, or even fragility and grief. And then I turn the form of each flower into the embroidered design with the use of golden beads, just like how Botticelli used gold to accentuate the detail in his painting. when we design a collection, the thing that we will not likely to do is that we will not draw the inspiration from someone else's work, because those are a finished product of someone else's vision. But the exceptional is if you want to draw inspiration from someone else's vision, you can draw it from someone that is already passed away, from the great designers that had designed something that is historical, something that we can learn a lot about. And for the third piece of this collection, I inspired from the iconic dresses Venus and Juno by Christian Dior. Both gowns are famously known for their iridescent embellishments and delicate floral-like embroidery that creating a graceful sense of movement and ethereal beauty. To reinterpretation this into my own design, I still bring the detail that I used in the previous pieces, and then featured the element that I was inspired by Venus and Juno, which is the petal shape that surrounds the body and the ombre pattern in the embroidered petal detail. As you can see, every design that created is like an ikigai of every aspect that we included into our design process, whether it's like inspiration, concept, as well as customer expectation that can count as one aspect as well. And the design itself is like the middle point between every aspect of that. And as I said, I kind of took the unconventional way when I created this collection. Normally you have to sketch the whole collection first and then go step by step. But for this collection, I kind of flow with the idea that was coming up when I finished each piece and kind of connect the dots from there. And it's quite the approach that very enjoyable for me to do so. Nowadays, I'm not approaching the concept of inspiration too seriously anymore. Back then when I was in school, I have to approach it in a very structural way. Before I choose to do any inspiration, I have to think, will the teacher would like it? Or I can find a reason to defend myself that I really want to do this inspiration for the whole entire semester of the project. And of course, that approach had trained me to think in order, to think structurally. But now I'm allowing myself to be a lot more free. If I feel inspired to do something, I'm just do it, and it's quite something that is very enjoyable and it makes me happy. There is this beautiful meaning of the root word of inspiration, which is inspira. It is a Latin word which means to breathe into, and in ancient religious context is often translated is when God, when divine or divine spirit breathes into human. The way that I take myself now is more like a conduit of what that wanted to be created through me, using my skills, using my knowledge. And ironically, when I take myself this way, I don't really have tight emotional attachment of what I create anymore. Emotional connection, yes, I have with what I created. Emotional attachment, not much anymore. And I found that it is a very healthy relationship between me and my art.